So we all have experienced failure, but today I really want to challenge you to look at failure through a totally different lens. Are you ready? Let's go. So as we go through this thing called life, we all will and all have experienced things going wrong. Sometimes it can be likened to walking a tightrope whilst juggling flaming torches, because there's always something going on. There is always something that can go wrong. There are 100 different things being thrown at you all at once. It is a hell of a juggle. So failures will come. And many times when we experience failure or something not going our way, it can decrease our motivation. The other thing it can do is make us lose sight of our goal, because as our motivation decreases, it increases our fear, because we think, oh, if I fail this time around, if this hasn't worked, then maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I need to stop. But everyone fails. And this is the point of the video, to get us to flip the script. So how can we start looking at it differently? So first off, one of the things that we have to remember is what I've started this video saying, is that everyone has a failure story. If you look at the people that we admire, they all have a failure story. We talk about people who are overnight successes, but sometimes that overnight can be a year, 5 years, 14 years, 20 years. And throughout that period, they may be one failure after another of things that just didn't go right for them. So we are never going to get it right from beginning to end. And there will always be a curveball. But the good thing about it is that you will be able to, in time, look back at your story, your journey, and you can talk about the failures, and you'll even be able to laugh at some of those failures, because it all comes part of the journey of how you got to where you're going. How do you get to really rejoice at your successes if you don't have failures to compare them to? So just be prepared when you see those curveballs come in. You'll be like, I'm going to laugh at you one day. Let's see how I get through this one. Which leads us into number 2. Failure is a learning experience. As bad as it might be, knowing that a particular thing doesn't work means that you now know one way it doesn't work. And it brings you one step closer to what actually does work. So it really helps you with your growth. Let me tell you about a time that I look back as one of my huge learning periods that came out of a failure. So I was acting up in a role for quite some time, probably about a year on and off. And there came the opportunity for this job to be made permanent. So I went for the interview, but let me tell you how I went into the interview, right? If any of you know Victoria Station in London and you're coming in on the Southeast trains, you know that you pull up into the station and there's this huge building on top of it. So basically you're pulling up into the station, you're looking at this big ominous building coming towards you. That was the building that I was meant to go in for my interview. And as the train was pulling up, it's like physically I was going back, because I was just like, I'm not ready for this. I don't think they want me. This is not going to be good. I just want it to be over. And I went into the interview and surprise, surprise, I totally flopped. I wouldn't have given me the job. But anyway, when I came out of that interview and I had feedback from the manager, who was my manager at the time, who carried out the interview, he was just like, Rachel, what happened? And I said, I know it was bad. But what had happened to me going into that interview was my confidence had been knocked, because I'd been acting up in a position and I'd had no support from my team, because there were a few people who were there who believed that even though it was a fair process and I was given the opportunity to act up after the interviews, they felt that because of their experience and had been there longer, they should have got it. It was kind of like walking into a war zone some days when particular people were in the office. There was no support. There was undermining. So it really knocked my confidence. Plus, there was an opportunity for training that was given to some of the others in the office. And even though I was acting up in that position, I realized until it was quite late that, hold on, they got the opportunity. Why hadn't I got the opportunity? And I felt as if, you know what, maybe they don't want me in that position. And maybe, well, why did they give it to me in the first place? But I started doubting myself. So going into that interview, I was going into it thinking, they really don't want me anyway. The learning that came out of that when I sat down in the debrief session was me saying to myself, you know what, Rachel, if you're not happy about something, you need to speak up. And in that session with my then manager, it felt as if somebody else was speaking. But I said, I felt as if I wasn't the one who was wanted for the job. And I could see him kind of recoil, the same way that I was recoiling, pulling into the train station. I could see him physically recoiling in his chair, like, what made you think that? And I told him what I had experienced when I was was acting up. I told him the opportunity for training that had come up that was given to my colleagues that I had been excluded from. And then he explained that, you know what, it came up and the piece of paper came under his nose. He didn't even really read it. He just signed it. So it was an oversight on his part, but I should have raised it. The learning that came out of that experience from that day forward, I was able to find the courage to articulate what was happening for me, my needs, and to advocate for myself. And then when the job came up again, I went for it and I got it. But even though it was a really low point, if you've ever been in that position, then you know exactly how it feels to think that, oh, they really don't want me. Why did they put me in this position? My colleagues aren't being supportive of me. And it really knocked my confidence. But when I sat in that space and owned that failure and took responsibility for the fact that I went into an interview with a defeatist attitude, I was able to learn from it. And from that day forward, I've been able to sit with whoever you are within the organization and raise points that sometimes might be uncomfortable for them or for me. But I know that by raising those points, it's going to get the needed outcome for the organization, for me or for them. And that, I would say, has been one of my biggest learning experiences that has helped me going forward in business and career, that I'm not afraid to ask those difficult questions. So out of your failures, what learning can you get? Number 3, failure can be a resilience builder. When things don't go your way, when you might have to scratch it, break it down, start from scratch again, you build that mental toughness that, you know what? You can get through anything. And there have been times when life will throw you those curveballs and you just think to yourself, is that all? Is that it? Is that it? I can get through that. So failure helps you to build that mental toughness that puts you in that position that, like, bring it on, bring it on. I got this. I can get through anything. And there have been times that I have sat there and I've just been like, bring it, because there is nothing, based on some of the crap that we go through in our lives, there is nothing that the universe can throw our way that we cannot handle. Because the way I see it is that, what's the word I'm looking for? Undermine. It's not to undermine your experience or my experience, but some of the tough times that we're going through, when we look around and remember that somebody else may be going through worse, it's literally like, if they can go through worse, then I can get through this. And if I've been through this, then I know that I have the tough nuts to get through other bits. So bring it on. The 4th point is that failure can really aid our problem solving skills and our creative problem solving skills at that. Because imagine life throwing you this curveball, right? And you now have to go and think of something totally different to what you had originally planned. It really gets your creative juices flowing and it forces you to come up with something entirely different at times to what you would have originally done. So imagine reaching a stumbling block on the way and then you think, hold on, this stumbling block is actually a launching pad and it's thrown you into a whole other thought. That's what failure can do. It forces you to think outside the box. You can come up with innovative ideas. And sometimes, you know, when you hit these stumbling blocks in life, someone used this analogy for something else the other day, and I just can't get it out of my head. But I'm going to use it for this, because sometimes when you hit those stumbling blocks, right, and you're driving through this road of life, you literally have to pull up on the side of the road, put the car in park, turn on your hazard light, and just sit there for a minute and just think, whew, what the hell do I do now? Where do I go now? But in that moment when you're thinking of, I was meant to be going this way and now I have to do something else, you will come up with so many fresh ideas that might take you in such a new, delicious way of getting to the goal that it might look even slightly different and better to what you had planned. So let us embrace failure. And know, this is what my coach tells me as well, know that when you are on your journey, when you are going and striving towards your goals, there is always going to be a stumbling block that comes your way. And when you see it, you need to be like, I see you. Okay. So you're coming to throw me off course. Okay. Number 1, what lesson can I learn from you? okay, you're coming to test me. Let me see what lesson this is going to teach me, right? I knew you were coming. I knew you were coming. And I'm tough enough to deal with you. Okay, so bring it. And I'm going to figure out how to swerve around you, go over you, or blast through you. That is how we need to look at our stumbling blocks that the universe will throw our way, or what we see as our failures. We are rewriting the script on failures. So now that you are ready, you are armed, you are geared up for whatever stumbling block or curveball may come your way, you might need some extra ammo. So how about you look at my previous video on resilience building, and that will give you some tips on how to maintain a healthy resilience and how that can best work for you. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.